Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Base Hospitality Group training video. This morning we're going to be taking a look at a topic that's primarily geared for our managers and leaders. It's a big picture training that is going to be laying the foundations for understanding financial performance. And for today's video, we're going to be applying that to understanding the purpose of a solid sales effort. The first thing that's important to note here is that with no irony included, we are a for-profit business. We are doing what we do to make money, to make a profit, because doing so has the potential to create a better quality of life for everyone who's a part of this organization. In the business world, if your business does not make money or profit, you cannot do great things for your people. You can't pay them well. You can't offer them any kind of benefits. Nothing. If you're not making money, at some point the business is going to fail, collapse, either be taken back by the bank, or owners are just going to run out of cash to fund the business, and the whole thing collapses. We'll be looking at a graph here shortly that will help you understand a little bit of our financial model. But what's really important to understand is that businesses are not just cash pools. They're not just big slush funds where you can pull money out of all of these different places and just pay people whatever. If the business does not stand on its own as profitable, there's nothing to be given or paid to the employees of that business. So I know that's simple. I know most of us understand that, but I think it's important to at least state that so that you as managers can then explain to your employees that if we want to be able to continue to pay you well and give you good competitive raises, the business has to make money. So we are a for-profit business, and we are in an industry that's called a high fixed cost industry. So it costs a lot to run a hospitality property. If you're in restaurants, it costs even higher, high cost for a restaurant. Hotels are high cost. Hotels actually cost significantly more, but usually it's less costly per the revenues for a hotel than it is for a restaurant, which we'll look at again on this graph. So we are in a high fixed cost industry. That means that just having a hotel property, a hospitality property, sitting there costs a lot of money. Utilities are expensive. Property taxes are expensive. Building maintenance is expensive. And then you have employees. Now, whether we have one person in the hotel or 150 people in the hotel, we still have to staff our hotel front desk 24/7, 365. We also have to have staff members in the restaurant if we're open, whether or not we have one guest, whether we have one guest or we have 100 guests, we have to have a staff member in there. And because of all those things and all those departments, the cost to run a hotel is high, but it can be fixed, meaning stay largely steady as revenues increase over time. That's why we're in this business. So when you fix the costs of a business like a hotel by appropriately staffing and developing effective systems so that the same roughly number of people can handle 100 rooms that would handle 60 rooms, you've created a high fixed cost business model, financial model, and now we're in good shape because now we can apply our sales systems and processes to see revenues increase over time while our expenses stay largely static, as we'll show you here in a moment. However, it's really important to note that the high fixed cost model only works if your costs are fixed. It only works if we're not doubling the number of staff every time we double the number of guest rooms. If we have one staff member for 10 guest rooms and we need to have 2 front desk employees, 2 restaurant employees, 2 kitchen employees, 2 maintenance employees, 2 housekeeping employees, 2 management employees to hold 20 guests, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. Now, you'll recognize that, housekeeping, we do have to double for going from 10 to 20. Right, we do. But as long as we're only adding employee hours, associate hours on a limited basis, as in one department out of 8, we're keeping our costs largely fixed. Again, I said it's a largely fixed cost, not completely fixed costs. There's no way to completely fix costs because even our guests consume stuff. Shampoos, conditioners, we have to launder their sheets. So there's a little increase of cost for every guest that comes on board. What you don't want to see is a major or significant increase in cost for every new guest room that we rent. So when we fix our costs, this allows us to put forth a massive effort because it's simple to fix costs. And actually COVID in 2020 was very helpful for us in that it allowed us to fix some of the operational problems and the lack of systems that we inherited when we acquired a couple of our properties. So COVID kind of cleaned house and allowed us to start with a clean slate. So our hotels right now are operating what I would consider a very fixed cost, which is great news because now as everyone starts to push and focus on this sales system and the sales effort, as we see revenues increase, we don't have to worry about our costs skyrocketing. Okay? So now to show you this graph, and I hope you guys can see this. This graph shows you time. This x-axis shows you time, 0, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. The y-axis here is dollars. The thin line is expenses and the thick line is revenue, as you can see here. So in a high fixed cost industry, what we want to see is an expense line that over time stays largely static, even though revenues and occupancy are increasing. See back here, the profit margin is basically non-existent at year 0. The revenues basically cover the high fixed cost to operate. In hotels, it varies, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million a year is pretty normal to see as a high fixed cost. In other words, it costs $1 million just to have that hotel open for the year. So if you hit $1 million in revenue, which we're assuming for this chart, then you cover your expenses and you don't make any money, which in the real world would mean if you don't make any money, then the next year when employees are here going, hey, I'm ready for my annual review, which usually doesn't mean that I'm looking for feedback. It usually means I'm looking for my raise, which is fair and appropriate. But if the property's not making money, there's no money there. The business has to be able to support its employees and its employees' wages. And if the business doesn't do that, there's nothing there for them. So in this case, we have $1 million expense, which I didn't show here, but I can jot down. So this is $1 million, and we're going to call this $2 million. So here, we have $1 million of revenue that covers our $1 million of expense. But right here, as we implement our sales effort and revenues start to climb, our expenses stay static because we fixed our costs. We know how to staff our properties, that means. That means when we go from 10 rooms, which maybe you'll see in March, got 10 rooms a night, it's slow, and we go to all of a sudden, you got a full house. We're not doubling our entire staff to manage that. We're only adding staff as absolutely necessary to be able to provide the quality of service that we expect. That's why your baseline operating procedures manual shows you how many rooms we expect housekeepers to clean. So 8 to 12 is kind of our range. That includes stayovers, of course. And the reason for that is if we go from 8 rooms to 12 rooms rented in a single night, that's a 50% increase in revenue. That means that we expect that same housekeeper who cleaned 8 rooms to be able to now the next day clean 12 rooms, and our cost remains fixed. It's the same amount of cost. Yeah, she's there for a few more hours, or he's there for a few more hours, but we're not adding a second staff person when our revenues go up by 50%. So I've actually seen hotels that had a revenue line go like this one here, revenue line that went up like this, and their expenses actually went about like this. And at this point right here, because they didn't have systems, they didn't fix their costs, at this point right here, this is now a negative margin, which means they were losing about $250,000 annually, even though their revenues were increasing year over year over year. That's disastrous. So we have a fixed operating model. So for some of you guys that are in larger hotels, and by larger hotels, I mean anything over 85 rooms, when you guys start to get really busy and you're going to be full for the summer, we've got to talk about how you're going to staff that so you're not just throwing people in who have nothing to do. We have a very specific process and thresholds at which time we add staff members per rooms occupied. And so we'll be looking at that together in the coming weeks. However, for now, we're looking at revenues. We're looking at a high fixed cost business, which is this line here. This is our expenses. And we are talking about this thick black line, which is our revenue line that we are going to see go up and up and up over the next few years. And this $2 million line is probably actually a little bit low for some of you guys hotels. Some of you are probably going to see something more like this and be up here around the $4 million mark. It's really important that when that happens, our costs remain fixed appropriately. So how do we go from the $1 million mark here to the $4 million mark here, or the $2 million mark here in our other properties? Well, that's pretty simple. Part of it obviously is COVID, right? That's hopefully going away. And the other part is a mix of what we call revenue management. Revenue management is made up of 2 components. Rate and yield management, that's one component, and the other is sales. So I say that because we're not going out to try to create new demand in a market. Now, we've done that, and there will be some of that that just happens because of what we do, but that's not what we're presenting today. We believe that there's an opportunity to both increase revenues through better rate and yield management, which is going to be discussed in another video for managers. And today we're going to be looking at sales. How do we see an increase in revenue through sales? All right, so sales in the hotels, as I discussed last night, is simple. Actually, 2 nights ago. It's simple. We are providing a service. It's a known service for someone with an existing and known demand. In other words, we're not providing hotel rooms for people that don't need it and trying to convince people who don't want to stay in a hotel to come stay in a hotel. That's not what sales is in this industry. What sales is in our industry is simply offering a service to someone that we know is staying in our market, in our town, and giving them a great value for their dollar, and thereby convincing them to come and give their business to us instead of someone else. That's what sales is in the hospitality industry. It's really simple. We do this by increasing our market share of the demand that comes into a market. So what does that mean? That means that, let's say this is our market's demand, and we're going to say there are 100 room nights coming into our market, and there are 4 hotels in that market. Those are all supposed to be equal size, and an equal market share means that everyone in the market, each hotel in the market, is getting 25 rooms per night. Everybody shares, that's everybody's whatever. But we're not going to do that. We don't like to share. I'm just kidding, we do, but we're more concerned with providing a better quality of life for our associates, which means we want to go out and we want to try to get just two of this hotel's rooms. So now these guys are going to get, they're going to get 23. That's not so bad. Nobody's probably going broke over losing a couple rooms, right? And we want to get these guys. We just want 2 of their rooms over here. And this is real. Because there are often nights in your markets where there may only be and what we've now done, by just taking 2 rooms from each of these guys, we've increased our market share of occupied rooms to 31 from 25. That is actually more than a 20% increase in revenue. Just by grabbing 2 rooms from each of the other hotels in the market. This is how simple hotel sales is. This is not complicated. This doesn't have to be about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you break it down to the simplest level, which is just that we're going to try to get a couple more rooms from each of our competitors in the market each night. If you were to add 6 rooms times 365 nights, somebody do the math real quick, but I guess I can do it here for us. There's 2190. That's an extra 2,190 room nights per night that we just got. And let's say our average rate is $100. Just by grabbing 2 rooms a night, you just increased your revenue by $219,000 on the year. That's really good. That's, at its simplest, what sales is. So, how do you do it? How do we get 2 rooms out of each of those hotels? Even if it's only 3, that's 6 new rooms a night for us. How do we go get that? Well, it's actually very, very simple. The first place that it happens is at the front desk. I rolled out a video 2 nights ago. I cannot overstate the importance of that video for you guys as managers, making sure your front desk staffs have that in place and it becomes a normal part of who they are when they're on the job at the front desk. Our front desk, dialed in, attentive to who's staying, collecting room blocks, getting them booked, quoting rates on the phone, booking rooms. That's going to see a revenue increase. Banquets are calling. Having our staff able to tell them some about what stuff costs to rent a banquet room or to stay in the hotel while they have the person on the phone is going to get us that much closer to being able to book that room when someone in our sales team or one of our managers talks to that client for the first time. And the big one, the really big one, is that our staff develops an intuition while they're on the phone booking reservations about when someone calls looking to book a corporate room. What brings you to town? I'm here on business. Oh, wow, great. Who do you work for? Getting that information and turning it into a sales lead or turning it into a sales corporate contract right then and there. If our front desk staff can start doing these things extremely well, each of our hotels will likely exceed budgeted revenues by about, I'm going to say $50,000 to $100,000 a piece just this year. just because our front desk staff gets dialed in and starts executing well. The front desk is extremely important in the sales effort. It cannot be overstated. So, managers, make sure your team watched that video, understands that video, and then executes everything in that video. It's very, very important. It's your job to encourage them as they do it well, to teach them as you see them making mistakes, and hold them accountable, which means both encourage and correct if they're not doing what you've asked them to do. The front desk can also learn to play things on the fly when non-corporate guests call and they're trying to book a room and you quote them a rate and it's $129 and you kind of hear on the other end of the phone, well, what kind of rate are you looking for? Sometimes a person will respond back, I was looking for something around $115. $129 to $115, I think we can make that happen. Book it. Get people stand. But the only way this happens is if our front desk is empowered. They know you believe in them. They understand what they're doing and why, and they're encouraged to do it well. And then lastly, they're held accountable. So again, you can refer to last night's video for some more on that. So front desk is the number one thing in the sales process to being successful and seeing revenues increase at the hotels. The second thing, and this is an easy one, you guys are never on Facebook, but if you were, you could see in the local happenings, events, activities, tournaments that are coming to town. I just heard the other day, one of our communities is about 10 miles from a major softball tournament. It's a 4 or 5 day softball tournament. Well, let's make some phone calls, find out who's organizing that tournament, find out if they have enough hotel rooms in their immediate area, and offer to either host some of the teams or be a backup site. So watch the news in the local happenings, use social media, use the newspapers, use your local CVB meetings or your Chamber of Commerce meetings. Find out what's going on and offer the service that we know they need, which is lodging. The third thing, so we got front desk is one. Second thing I mentioned was news and local happenings. The third thing is parking lot drives. This could be any parking lot, but often it's your competitive hotels' parking lots. Take a ride through there. Jot down. You should always, as you know, be carrying a notebook. If you're a manager, you should always have a notebook. If you're on the sales team, which if you're a manager, you are, you should definitely always have a notebook so you can jot down, hey, look at that, there's 5 trucks from Gunderson Electronics. I'm going to write it down, and there's a phone number on the truck, and I'm going to pass it along to our sales team, or I'm going to call them myself in the morning. Parking lot drives are an old school way that's really, really simple to find who's coming to your market that's not staying in your hotel. The busy nights for corporate travel, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, those are the nights that you guys as managers can be ripping through parking lots, jotting down some names of companies and some phone numbers and making calls the next morning. If you're not going to be in there the next morning, pass it along to Jonathan. That's what he's here to do, and he's happy to make those phone calls for you. Number 4, hit the phones. Okay, I've mentioned this several times. Hit the phones. You find a company, a truck that's sitting in a parking lot, just dial the number. Listen, sales is mostly about diligence. We talked yesterday is about anticipation and something else. Well, at the end of the day, sales is really about diligence. Just being willing to pick up the phone and make phone calls until you get that new business in your hotel. Jonathan is here to help us with that. He's great with these kind of phone calls. As you get to know him, you'll see like, wow, he's really good at this. And he is really good at this. And he's got a great personality for sales, and he's got a great personality to make people like him. That's why he's so successful. However, I've seen people with very different personalities from Jonathan who are very effective in sales as well. You don't have to be the friendliest person on the planet to make effective sales calls. In fact, sometimes it's slightly ornery people who are just unwilling to give up, who are the most effective salespeople. They just hammer the phone, hammer the phone, hammer the phone. I have a really close friend who's in sales to this day. He does software sales, and we used to work together. And he once told me that he expected to make 20 phone calls for every single new contract. In other words, he would call a company 20 times before he expected them to sign a contract. He's like, if I got him signed up with 12 phone calls, I felt like it was the best day ever. 20 phone calls he would make. That's called relentless. If you will be a relentless phone caller, salesperson, manager, leader, I guarantee you will be successful. Not only in sales, but also in life. So managers, we have a sales person that's now joined us. He's also going to be helping with front of house operations. So we are creating a team for you and with you. That means that your roles and responsibilities are shifting some, but it also means that you get to be a participant in the sales effort at our hotels, making phone calls, calling corporate contracts, corporate travelers, inviting them and asking them to give us their business. Give us the privilege of hosting you. We would love to put up your people. We'd love to take care of them. Please give us that opportunity. You guys as managers are now being allowed to further participate in that than you have up till this point. We're making a real push at this point in time. You've done some of it and we appreciate it tremendously. Now as our staffs have gotten stabilized and COVID is moving behind us, we're freeing up more and more of your time to be a part of the sales effort. I say it's a privilege because as you personally start to be the one seeing revenues increase because of your efforts, first of all, it's tremendously rewarding, but second of all, you become extremely valuable to us as an organization, which means great opportunities for your personal and financial growth in the future. So that, in a nutshell, is how sales fits into the context of financial performance in our hotels and why it is such an important part of who we are and where we're going. Our hotels now have their costs fixed. We're in a great spot as COVID is winding down. And now is the time to make a push for the increase of revenues that we set out for over a year ago. We look forward to seeing what you guys can do, and we look forward to celebrating both you and your victories.